Hey everyone, welcome to another Joe Gomez lesson. Sorry it's taking me so long to upload some stuff. I moved and had some other things going on, but I wanted to go ahead and get another lesson up here. So I thought something that'd be kind of easy to talk about would be transcribing in my thoughts and how to maybe go about that. But what I tell all my students, when they talk about transcribing, not being able to play by ear. Well, music's an oral art. It's something that you use your ear, and you use your ear more than you think that you do uh, when you're playing music. When you're reading music and realize you played a wrong note, you used your ear to figure that out. Uh, in most cases, you may be unaware of it, but sometimes after you play for a little while, you may say, "Oh no, no, that note was wrong," and you used your ear for that. But it's important to strengthen that. Uh, if you're a painter and you're, you're having a hard time seeing between different colors, that might put you at a disadvantage. So it's kind of the same thing with music. Uh, I've never kind of went through any like ear training things where I practice intervals. I've never done that. I've always listened to music and tried to play it back, and that's helped me in a lot of ways. When I first started playing guitar, I didn't take any lessons. Um, I listened to CDs and learned things that some people had taught me, but a lot of it was just from listening and uh, trying to figure things out, how they were doing it, and chords and everything like that. Um, so, why is transcribing important? Well, you're learning from people that came before you. I don't remember what painter it was. May have been like Picasso or somebody. Uh, when he was in his teens or early 20s or something, this was told to me that he went to a museum and he painted replicas of the paintings inside of the museum. So he was learning from what people before him did, and that could have been certain brush strokes and coloring techniques and shading and everything. So we can learn stuff like that from transcribing music ourselves. Even on guitar, if we're just transcribing other guitar players, we can start to hear what that guitar player is doing. You start to hear pick strokes, whether they hammered on, pulled off. You'll start to hear if they were sweep picking or raking, whatever you call it, or if they were alternate picking. You can start to hear if they do more than one downstroke, stuff like that. So you can start to understand how some maybe faster lines are put together or certain ways things are phrased. You start to pick up on that. And after a while, it starts to be a more natural thing for you to do in your own playing, especially if it's something that you like. But you also start to learn construction of songs, and that's really important. You understand why chords are moving from one to the next. You'll start to recognize patterns in music. Um, and if you're an improvising musician, that's a great tool to have, especially to know if you're hearing a major or minor chord, uh, or you can kind of tell where the chord progression is going to lead to. Especially if you're going to the bridge, there's usually only a couple of things that happen. Uh, so those are some of the different things too. You learn some compositional devices that happen by transcribing. So the first thing that I did, and this is something that everybody can do, is start to get familiar with how major and minor chords sound. And just play one right after another. On the guitar, if you're a beginner, uh, try to. I didn't really set up to play, but everybody kind of knows this. First open position D major chord. Listen to how that sounds. If you want to, you can sing the notes back. That always will strengthen things. And play it as minor. So you start to learn the quality of what a major and minor chord sounds like. It doesn't matter, you know, what the chord name is. It could be F major or B major. They're all going to sound like major chords. They all have the same sound to them. Here's a B major chord. Right? If I play a G major chord, right, it's a little bit higher, but it has the same sound. It has the same interval structure. It's put together the same way. Same thing with minor chords. It doesn't matter if it's an A minor chord, a G sharp minor chord, whatever. It's going to have the same sound to it. You know, in voicing may play a little bit of a difference, but it's still going to have a minor sound to it. Like if I play A minor and use a different chord construct or voicing of a D minor, you can still hear they have the same quality to them. They're minor chords. If I were to play both of those as major, they have the same quality. So what I would do is, when I first started playing guitar, it was, you know, fairly simple songs. Stuff like Damien Rice comes to mind. That was some of the first things I started playing. He's a singer-songwriter for people that don't know who he is. So I had a little bit of background in music, so I kind of knew a little bit about, you know, most likely each section of the song is going to be an even number. It's going to have 8 measures to it, and it'll repeat that and then go to a different section. So I had some of that already, some knowledge of that. So what I would do is I would count out. I would listen to the song and count out how many measures each section was. So let's just say it was 8 measures, and I would write out on a piece of paper 8 different measures, and then I would listen to the song again and just see when there was chord changes. So maybe the first 2 measures of the song, it's the same chord, and then the 2 measures after that are a different chord, and then the next 2 measures of that is a different chord, and then the last 2 measures it changes chords twice. So then I would write that down in there. I'd say, all right, chord change here, chord change here, chord change here, here and here. And then I would listen back to it again, and all I would listen for is chord quality. I'd say, okay, that's a major, then it went to a minor, then it went to another minor, and maybe it went to another minor, then a major, and then it repeated again. No, I'm not telling you any certain song, I'm just making stuff up. But I would listen to chord quality, and then from there I would try to use my ear and just pick out a bass note. And eventually you'll kind of hear the home note, the note that that signifies what key that you're in. And I would just, you know, I'd play it random, and I would just hold the note out, you know, and I'd say, no, that wasn't it. That's a little bit closer, but I may need to go up. Okay, I can hear it. Everything kind of resolves to that. And then I would find out what note that is. That particular note was A. And then I would figure out the chords in the key of A. And there's a system to that. And I don't know if I've talked about that in the lesson series yet, but we'll get to that when we get into chords. But there's only a few options to choose from when you're playing songs that are in a key. And then I usually figure the song out pretty quickly. And you know, if the song did leave key, you know, your ear kind of perks up. So then you start to learn chord progressions, and after you start doing that for a little while, you start to hear, maybe you know it's an A major chord, but that voicing's just not working. You know, you might have to play something else. You know, oh yeah, it was that one. So you'll start to get better at that, and you'll start to recognize those different chord voicings. And then eventually you've got the whole chords of the song. So for people that are into more of that style, singer-songwriter, country, pop, even rock songs, um, they don't have a lot of single note stuff. That's how I do it, and I think it's a fairly easy way to do that is to just break it down into really small parts. Listen back and listen to just something that's small rather than, okay, I've got all these chords, the song's 3.5 minutes long, how am I going to figure this out? I don't know what key it's in, and so on. To take a small section and work on little pieces of it. How many chord changes are there in a section? Does it go to major or minor? Because that's what you're going to see most of the time. There are, dominant seventh chords and diminished chords and everything. But for the most part, you're going to see major and minor chords. Once I started getting into jazz, I started realizing the importance of transcribing. Again, this is what everybody before me did. And again, it's learning compositional techniques. When you're improvising a solo, you're composing a solo for that piece over the top of that chord progression. It's really not, I'm going to play random notes and hope that it works, and some people have that ability and some people don't. It's really not like that. It's more about using creativity and compositional techniques of single notes to create a good sounding melody for your solo. That's really what it is. So when you're transcribing, you're learning bits and pieces of information of how one person did it versus another person. You start to find there's a lot of similarities in the way that people play, whether they were their idol or whatever. But there's a lot of compositional techniques that are used that everybody has their own twist to it. Like we talked about with surrounding notes of an arpeggio, like stuff like that. You'll start to hear how other people do that. Wes Montgomery's going to do that different than John Coltrane, or Charlie Parker. Everybody has their own little way of doing it, and you can start to pick up these little techniques. You also start to learn a little bit on rhythmic timing, and you'll start to learn more about where notes land at to create a certain sound. And for me, even though I'm playing jazz music, I've started to go back and transcribe solos of things that I listen to outside of jazz. I'm a big Steve Vai fan, and that happens to be something I'm working on now with one of his solos. But on top of that, I'm also working on a Howard Roberts solo as well. And I keep a notebook of things that I want to transcribe, that I want to find out what they're doing so that I can use it and steal it, and then it's mine, and then people think I sound great even though it's just an idea that I stole, right? But I keep a notebook by, and I say this in most of the lessons. There's a notebook for almost, or at least a journal entry for speed or what you want to learn. But I also do it with transcribing too. And the way that I approach single notes, because for me it's pretty hard, and I think it is for everybody, and it's why a lot of people kind of give up. But I kind of break it down the same way, but a lot smaller. For me, I transcribe maybe a phrase a day. I'm not worried about transcribing the entire solo in a day or even a week. I transcribe a phrase a day. And that's just listening to it over and over and over again until I can figure it out on the guitar. Sometimes it happens really quick, and if I feel up to it, then I'll do the next phrase. Some jazz lines are pretty long and they're hard to figure out, so I may work on that for that day, play it a couple times, make sure I've got it memorized. I'll go back and play the other parts of the solo that I figured out, and then I'm done for the day. So usually I get, just depending on what happens, maybe 10 minutes of practice of transcribing single notes every day. And to me, that's way more relaxed than worrying about trying to defeat this entire solo. You know, especially if it's something like a Coltrane solo that you want to try to figure out. You know, you maybe listen to it a couple times and say, "This is great. I'm going to figure it out." Then you start working on it, and you're, oh God, I'll never get all this. There's just so many notes. The solo's long. But if you look at it as more, I'm going to figure out this one phrase. If I can figure out this one phrase today, I'll be happy. You know, in about a month, you'll have the entire solo down. Uh, Maybe sooner, and maybe longer. You never know, just depending on the length of the solo. But you know, I don't think that's such a bad thing. You know, just a month, and by then you've really got it memorized, and you can start looking at techniques. And by then, a lot of things will show up in your playing. Like I'm transcribing Howard Roberts' solo from Days of Wine and Roses, and he does a lot of bending in it, which is something that I haven't done since I was playing rock music. So I haven't really bent a note in like 8 years, it feels like. Uh, but he does a lot of bending, and he does a lot of pre-bending, where I've got to remember how that feels to get a pre-bend, um, which, you know, that kind of strengthens your ear too, is bending notes. Uh, but I've started to notice that that's coming out in my playing a whole lot, and someone else mentioned, they said, "You're bending notes a whole lot." I said, "Yeah, I'm transcribing the solo," and it kind of happened. And so every time I go back and play the solo, because I'm learning the next phrase, you know, I've got to do that little bending lick again. Uh, so that all kind of starts to make your own personality as well on the instrument, because you're taking away things that you particularly like from a solo. Pretty much 9 times out of 10, if you sit two people in a room and have them listen to a solo, they'll like different parts, or they'll have a different favorite part. So you know, that's but I think it is real important to learn what people before you did. You know, there's so many things to learn. You know, just learning scales and learning arpeggios and trying to make that sound like music is hard at first. You know, the couple remedies to it are learning as many melodies to songs as you can, which is a thing that I heard Gene Bertassini say. So if you're not very creative with melodies, you know, there's thousands and thousands of songs that have just, you know, gorgeous melodies to them. Learn as many melodies. You'll start to learn, again, composition. You could also transcribe to learn how other people use arpeggios and scales and intervals to create music, whether it is a melody to a song, or maybe it's part of a solo, or maybe it's just a lick that they play in the middle of a song if you're listening to pop music or rock. You start to learn how to use everything that you gained from practicing scales and practicing arpeggios. And you can also learn from books. You know, I don't put books down, and I think it's you know, kind of the next step of development. You know, something that people before us didn't have. That's why they had good ears and transcribed all the time. But now people are writing them down to where we can learn them, and I think that's a tool that we should use. Just because we don't have time to transcribe everything, and sometimes it's easier to see something on paper, and it makes more sense to us. We can kind of see what the chord quality is. We can see how they used the overtop and rhythmically, and how it worked out. Because I mean, there's tons of books with licks and even full solos, and I think those are good tools, especially for beginner improvisers. I think that's a great tool, because they'll start to learn bits and pieces of what people call the vocabulary. And then when you actually go to transcribe solos, you start to hear those little bits and pieces of vocabulary, and so you already know what it is, which makes it easier to transcribe. And that's the same whether it's rock or pop. Everybody has, you know, every genre has its own, what people would call vocabulary. You know, in rock it may be pentatonic licks and everything, but it's a certain way that they play it that everybody kind of does, that kind of really gives it that sound. But Yeah, I don't think I played hardly anything for this lesson, but I hope it's something that really helps some people. Just breaking things down into smaller sections when transcribing, but it is important. Uh, if you've got to use a program like Transcribe or I think it's called AnyTune Pro, something like that. I think it's a Apple app, or maybe it's for Android as well. I don't have that one. Um, those are great tools because I tell my students if they go to transcribe, I have no problem with them slowing it down uh, to hear how certain things go. But you can also set things on repeat so you can just hear that one phrase or lick over and over and over again, or chord progression. Uh, I think those are great tools. As far as having things sped down, your ear gets better over time. Uh, I, everything gets strengthened. So if you start, it's like lifting weights. If you're really weak, you're probably not going to be able to curl 30 pounds, but you might be able to curl 5 pounds. Over time, you'll build the strength and you'll be able to curl 30 pounds. But I wouldn't start with it because you'll get frustrated because you can't do it. So, um, but yeah, I hope this lesson helps a lot of people, and um, I hope that everybody kind of gets the courage to at least transcribe a little bit, just a little bit a day. I mean, they even have games in the Android and Apple Store with different interval practice or scale recognition. All of that'll pay off at some point in your playing. So again, hope this helps, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.